About a dozen years ago, I sat in the lobby of a mikveh in the suburbs of Chicago with a dear member of my congregation there just a couple days before her wedding. Yet this was not the traditional immersion in the ritual bath that brides and grooms often make before standing under the chuppah. For this particular bride, we planned a mikveh ritual to help spiritually wash away past challenges from which it had been difficult to move forward. After escaping an emotionally abusive marriage years before, she had healed a great deal with therapy and friends and community. In her mid-50s, she found love and comfort with a new partner and was thrilled to marry him. After we said a prayer together that we had created for the moment, the mikveh attendant guided her through the process. Listening through the slatted doors made for rabbis and witnesses, I heard her enter the water, heard each full immersion, and heard the joy and relief in her voice as she said the blessing for immersion and the Shehechianu, thanking God for bringing her to that exact moment. Intellectually, she knew that she had come so very far and healed so much. Yet this physical Jewish ritual made all the difference for her emotional and spiritual journey toward letting go and finding healing. In that moment, the ritual was transformative. Fast forward a few years, and on a quiet morning, I stood on the bima with a young adult who had come out as a trans man a couple years before. He had gone through a process of aligning his life with his identity, how he appeared in the world, what his driver's license said, and so many details. And on the day I stood with him, we gathered close with his parents and siblings and some of his dearest friends, and I had the blessing of leading a ceremony of affirmation, confirming within the Jewish community his gender identity, and bestowing upon him a new Hebrew name of his choosing, so from that day forward, he could be called to the Torah with a name in keeping with his identity. Together, we cried, tears acknowledging the pain he had gone through in years past, tears of joy as he stood within our circle of support, knowing his Jewish community valued him and accepted him with open arms. The ritual drove this home in a much deeper and more complete way than mere words uttered in conversation ever could have. Now fast forward to just about any Friday morning here at Temple Chai, when our ECC, our preschool, gathers for singing and Shabbat blessings, and we invite children up to kindle the Shabbat candles. They love seeing the candles lit, and they cover their eyes with their sweet little hands and sing the blessings as best they can, really so well. They don't yet have the words to articulate that kindling the Shabbat candles distinguishes the day as holy, setting it apart as meaningful. The rhythm of the blessings and the actions of the rituals of Shabbat, which become ingrained over time, allow the message to be absorbed so much more deeply. These little ones understand in their kishkas that it's a unique thing to light the Shabbat candles, and it's a sign that Shabbat is a special and different time filled with blessings and traditions, family and friends, and joy. Rituals are not only symbolic, but they are powerful and multivalent, containing layer upon layer of meaning. On Passover, for example, we could simply fulfill the command to recall the Exodus from Egypt, and we could do our best to committing to telling the story and learning its lessons. Yet we have the Seder, where we eat special foods that are not only reminders of Seder's past, but make physical the emotional landscape of the mythic historical experience of our ancestors. It's not enough to intellectually understand that life must have been painful indeed for our ancestors in slavery. Instead, we eat maror, bitter herbs, and we feel it physically, and we taste it on our tongues. We are ritual beings. We have rituals that pervade practically every facet of our lives, though we may not customarily think of them as rituals. The classic is blowing out candles on a birthday cake, one for each year and one to grow on. We have bedtime rituals with our young children, the engagement ritual of a proposal with a ring, the Halloween ritual of trick-or-treating in the neighborhood. You may even have a ritual for making your coffee just so and enjoying it while quietly beginning your day. Or perhaps trying to drink it and letting it get cold while you usher your kids out the door for school. Sports fans seem to have a whole host of rituals to help them enjoy watching the game, and sometimes they even feel that these rituals have to be completed just right if they want their particular team to win. What separates a ritual from a simple routine or habit is that rituals can infuse meaning into our actions, providing comfort and a sense of completeness, and at times, deep spiritual meaning and connection. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote, "Perhaps the essential message of Judaism is that in the finite, we may perceive the infinite. It is incumbent upon us to obtain the perception of the impossible in the possible, the perception of life eternal in everyday deeds." When we engage in ritual with intention, we are carried out of the everyday and the rote and elevated to a sense of greater spirituality and connection to the divine, to ourselves, to our community, and to the world. In his book, The Power of Ritual, Turning Everyday Activities into Soulful Practices, author Casper ter Kuile quotes anthropologist Clifford Geertz. "In a ritual," he wrote, "the world as lived and the world as imagined turn out to be the same world." Ter Kuile explains, "In other words, ritual invites us to enter a way of life that we may barely glimpse, to be transported into a future that is simultaneously filled with our intention, yet remains delightfully unpredictable." It could well be that as I'm sharing about ritual, there could be many of you thinking that you're about your Jewish lives and feeling like you don't have very many rituals you engage in. So let's do a little experiment. By a show of hands, and yes, I'm really asking you to raise your hands. How many of you are sitting somewhere that feels like kind of your traditional seat in the sanctuary? Or maybe that you have one when you come for Shabbat. Okay, that's a good number. How many of you got together with family or friends yesterday for a Rosh Hashanah meal, whether or not you came to services? How many of you did anything at all for Shabbat sometime in the last year? Ate latkes during Hanukkah? Took part in a Passover Seder or meal? Have a mezuzah on the door of your home? How many of you will hear shofar on Rosh Hashanah? That's all of us. It's worth mentioning also that we have special Temple Chai rituals, kindling the candles together on the Shabbat of Hanukkah, wrapping each other in healing quilts during the healing service on Yom Kippur, making hundreds upon hundreds of peanut butter and fluff sandwiches on what I like to think of as Erev Christmas, and on and on. Now, it's true that in Reform Judaism, we believe that ethical commandments are obligatory, but ritual commandments are not binding in the same way, rather following the principle of informed choice as we discern which rituals to engage in. This means that we are entrusted with the responsibility to make educated and thoughtful choices about which Jewish rituals and actions to incorporate into our lives and into the life of our community, and which rituals and practices to set aside, which may not be meaningful to us personally or communally, or perhaps may even no longer be in keeping with our lives and our values today. This principle of informed choice is deeply important to me as a Reformed Jew, and it's key to our outlook on what it means to construct a meaningful, modern Jewish practice that does not require checking our intellect or our values at the door. Yet, the common notion that being a Reformed Jew means you simply observe less is not only, frankly, insulting, but is a fundamental misunderstanding of our movement. Done right, Reformed Judaism is actually more difficult and asks more of us than Orthodoxy. No one is going to tell us exactly what to do and the singular right way to do it. Instead, we have to learn, experiment, try rituals on for size, and make decisions for ourselves in order to construct our own Jewish practice that will be meaningful and sustainable for us. Scholar of ritual and innovation, Rabbi Dr. Vanessa Oakes defines rituals as conventional or patterned ways of doing things that have shared and often multiple meanings. And she notes that they are products of a time, a place, available physical materials, and appealing practices of other peoples. Oakes also teaches all rituals are made and remade. All rituals mean different things to different people, and all rituals were once new and are renewed, even the Jewish rituals that we may cherish most of all. It's worth acknowledging and bringing renewed intentionality into the Jewish practices and rituals that already punctuate our lives. And I want to reflect together today on how many of us are missing opportunities to tap into Jewish rituals and practices, either because we're somewhat unfamiliar with them, or because we aren't in the habit of it, or, and this is what worries me most, perhaps we feel distanced from rituals, feeling like they don't belong authentically to us, or maybe because there's a degree of intimidation. Maybe we don't know where to begin. We worry about getting it right, or concerningly, we might think that if we aren't following what the Orthodox community claims is the singular correct way to complete a ritual according to halakha, Jewish law, maybe we shouldn't try at all. If I turn the lights on and off and drive on Shabbat, can I really claim to observe Shabbat? If I don't want to have 2 sets of dishes and check every food for a hechsher, a kashrut symbol, should I even explore keeping kosher? If I don't pray 3 times a day with a minyan, should I really try out wrapping tefillin? What if I do it wrong? And what if I have been told previously, explicitly or implicitly, that it's not for me? So let me say firmly, as someone who has studied and is immersed in ritual and Jewish practice in her life's work, there is no one right way to do any ritual. You have access to every ritual. They exist for you to benefit from and choose among, to make your own and to adapt, and for you to create. They all belong to you. As we enter the year 5786, I want to invite you to join with me in exploring Jewish ritual and in finding ways to incorporate more Jewish ritual into our lives. Thus will we increase the beauty and meaning in our lives and in the life of our community. You may presume that as a rabbi who's well established in her career and who's been swimming in these waters for some time, I would have a ritual practice that I consider firmly established and fairly unchanging. And in many ways, that is true. I love ritual and learning about rituals and creating new ones and enacting rituals in community. But my Jewish practice continues to grow and evolve as I continue to grow and evolve through each life stage. And today I want to share with you a commitment that I'm making to deepen my own ritual practice. There is one particular ritual which over the years I've pondered revisiting, but haven't for quite some time, and that is wearing a kippah. Those of you who are regulars on Friday evenings know it has not until this moment been my practice to wear kippah. So here is my story with kippah. Right after I graduated from college, I was headed off to my first year of rabbinical school in Israel, in Jerusalem. And even though I'd never previously had the practice of wearing kippah, I decided that the time had come. I was going to be living in our homeland, fulfilling my dream of studying to become a rabbi, and it felt like the perfect time to begin wearing a kippah daily, to be reminded of my connection to God and of the importance of humility, and as a positive external sign of my Judaism and my developing rabbinate. And it would come with me wherever I went. Wearing a talit was already meaningful to me, but that's something we typically only wear during prayer. So too would wearing a kippah be meaningful to me, I hoped, and I could wear it all the time. And so I did. I struggled a bit with the mechanics of wearing it. At 21 years old, vanity edged its way in. Did it coordinate with my hairstyle or my outfit? How did I look wearing it? But I found a groove. Then a bigger challenge presented itself. As I walked through the streets of Jerusalem, I found myself stopped with alarming frequency by men who would take it upon themselves to helpfully educate me as to why I was mistaken to be wearing a kippah. "Little girl," one said to me, "that is not for you. That's only for men." They would speak to me in stuttering English, claiming Jewish law said kippah is only for men. Having studied the practice, I would debate back in my fledgling Hebrew, explaining that kippah is minhag, custom, not law, and there is no prohibition against women covering their heads. On and on this went. Over time, each interaction of this nature chipped away bit by bit at my resolve and distanced me from the meaning I'd hoped to draw from the practice. At a certain point, I found myself a bit anxious as I clipped on my kippah in the morning, until eventually I decided to take a break from wearing it for a while. And though my intention was to take a brief break, that hiatus ended up lasting 20 years. I confess I have never been fully at peace in letting this be my story with kippah. What might my experience have been if I tried out kippah a year later when I returned stateside, or if I'd limited wearing a kippah to define moments of doing Jewish, or when I was studying or observing Shabbat with my community? I've even felt a little bit of what I might call guilt, that I let someone else tell me that I didn't have the right to engage in a ritual practice, and that perhaps on some level, I internalized that or believed it. So now you are all my witnesses. Beginning today, I'm committing to the practice of wearing kippah when I'm doing Jewish, so to speak, and when I'm acting in my rabbinic capacity. I'm excited to explore what it feels like to have a positive external display of my Judaism and of my commitment to our community. And I'm hopeful that it will serve as a reminder, like a string tied around my finger, of my connection with the divine, if only I reach out to find it. I will sustain this commitment for 3 to 6 months, and I hope for an entire year. I'll reflect on my experience and may tweak how I'm going about the practice, and then I'll make a decision about whether I'll continue or whether I'll set it aside again, having given it a thoughtful and sustained trial run. Today on Rosh Hashanah, as we enter this new year, this is my call to you. Join me in this exploration of ritual, whether it's kippah or talit, creating or deepening a Shabbat practice, exploring a creative or traditional observance of kashrut, learning how to lay tefillin, or saying blessings before and after eating. Whatever practice you choose, I invite you to commit to exploring at least one new Jewish ritual. Every ritual belongs to you, and you do not have to do everything in order to do something. Ritual is not an all or nothing zero-sum game, and even a small shift can have major impact. It is never too late to incorporate more ritual into your life, nor is there a litmus test for what's enough or just right or too much. Rituals have the power to elevate the everyday, to add meaning and beauty to our lives, and add spiritual depth and connectedness into our Judaism. And it's not only okay to start experimenting with ritual before you fully understand a ritual. In fact, the only true way to grasp a ritual is by doing it again and again over time. The minister Stephanie Paulsell tells the story of how during her ministerial training, she shared with her mentor that she didn't feel ready to celebrate the Eucharist, Christianity's most important ritual. "I don't really know what it means yet," she told her mentor. And her mentor smiled and replied, "Stephanie, we don't eat the bread and the wine because we know what it means. We do it because we are learning what it means." This is what we will do together as we commit to new ritual exploration. We will learn what rituals might mean to us. After the holidays, for those who want to learn more about ritual and explore together experimenting with a new ritual practice, I'll invite you to sign up for a workshop I'll be leading on ritual as a spiritual practice, which will include a mix of larger group learning and one-on-one or small group learning with me, studying and exploring the rituals you are specifically interested in. The first workshop meeting will be on November 13th, which you don't have to remember because it'll be in your inboxes after the holiday. And I encourage you to sign up. Whether you join with me in exploring the practice of wearing a kippah or baking challah weekly before Shabbat or doing Havdalah each week to conclude Shabbat, whatever you choose, whether you engage in a traditional manner or make it your own, let us each commit to exploring and taking on at least one new ritual practice this year. To quote again from Casper ter Kela, "It is the oldest and oft-repeated practices that hold the most meaning in the end. Instead of acting like spiritual tourists, skimming the frothy fun off the surface, let's drink more deeply and luxuriate in the hidden delights of the real nourishment beneath. Like a cocktail, the good stuff is at the bottom." Let us draw from the well springs of the wisdom of our tradition, committing more deeply to our Jewish practice. If we do so, I am certain that we will add more meaning, beauty, connection, spirituality, and joy into our lives and into the life of our community. Keni Hiratson, may this be God's will. Amen.